Excuse me. My voice hasn't been used that much today. Good morning, friends, and welcome to the Wednesday LiveStream for Dulcimer Crossing. I'm Steve Yulberg, your host. Dulcimer Crossing is a resource that is online, providing they're filmed and accessible to you 24/7 lessons for playing mountain and hammered dulcimers. We also have fiddle lessons and dulcibro lessons. And these we've been going on now. This is our 11th year, I believe it is. And one of the things we do is provide this Wednesday live stream. So we are excited. We were able to host Pam Bowman for a live workshop last week, and she is a very exciting hammer dulcimer player. So I'm excited that we got to do that. But today I want to talk about something different. Banjo-style mountain dulcimers. This is a Banjammer. It's the name of the instrument that Mike Clemmer builds in Townsend, Tennessee. And we're going to talk about the whole range of these things. You can see this one is flat, and it and it doesn't actually have a body. I'll talk more about that later. But ever since there were dulcimers and there were people coming up with different ways and different ideas of, I wonder what would happen if, in much the same way that there are the National and the Dobro guitars and resonator guitars. Homer Ledford was somebody who experimented with that. I think he might have experimented with this, but the first person that I ever saw who brought one of these type of animals to a place where people could play on it was Doug Thompson from Southern California, who brought it to the Walnut Valley Festival at Winfield, which always takes place in September. A couple of weekends ago, is when that normally happens. Anyway, it was a regular dulcimer with a banjo head, a really tiny practice pad idea. This is a Remo practice pad that drummers use. But it was embedded in the body of the instrument, and got a chance to play it, had some other friends play it, and we were intrigued with the sound, which is, the whole point, right? Is why we do this. It's got a different tone than, even though it's tuned the same way. Now, you might notice that, if you can see, this is in a 4 equidistant string pattern right now, with a low D. Whoops, go back the other way. There we go. A low D, and then an A, and then 2 high Ds, like a D-A-D-D instrument. But the nut is also set up so that I could move it over in a traditional 3-string format and have 2 melody strings and 1 middle string. But one of the reasons that Mike does it this way is because on a banjo, you always have this high ringing string. And so when he designed his this way, he was seeking to imitate the sound of a banjo. And let's actually trade you out. He was very interested in the claw hammer style of banjo playing. Now, this is tuned in a G tuning, so it's not exactly the same, but it's got a D, a G, a B, and a D, and then a high G again. Hear that pop of the high string? That's kind of what he was looking for. And so when he plays it this way, he says, play your regular tablature music and just skip one of these strings. So if you have a 3-1 or a 0-1-3 chord, play on the A string and the high D string, leave the other one to ring. So his focus was, let this high D string ring while you play around it and let it be that drone. Now, there were, after Doug Thompson, I also saw the first one that I saw that came out of Fort Wayne was Dennis Den Hartog, who had kind of a closed shop in his house. I was on vacation and saw that we were visiting my wife's family who was from Fort Wayne. And so I thought, there's a guy with dulcimers in Fort Wayne. I got to go visit this guy. And it was so fun to meet him. But he had one that was very similar to Doug Thompson's. He called his um, wow, I can't remember what he called it. There've been a lot of names for these kinds of things. But his was also a box with this kind of a drum head idea that is on which the bridge rests. It's just sitting there. It's not glued on. It's just sitting there like on a banjo. It's the string pressure that holds it. And that's where that unique kind of sound comes from. Now, Mike Clemmer built this one, and he said he reasoned that he didn't need a box. He just needed a board. And so he simplified the idea. He told me that when Tull Glazner saw it, he called it roadkill dulcimer. And so when Mike built him one, he wood burned some tire tracks going across the back of it, as if it had been as if it had been run over, which just cracks me up. Excuse me. And anyway, so the thing I noticed first off is there's a different quality of sound than on a mountain dulcimer. It's got that banjo-y kind of clarity. But the other thing is, you might have noticed that I've got a mute in here. When I take it out, it's got a bigger sound. And a lot of banjos are just regular banjos are known for having this bigger sound. And it's very, very, it produces more volume. And a lot of people that I know who play this have sought it out because they're looking for volume when they play with other people. But it almost ends up being kind of like the garage band idea of teenagers who plug in their guitar and then everybody goes in the garage and turns their amps up to 10 and plays all at the same time. And there's this this powerful sound that comes out and a lack of clarity. And that's not what I was looking for. So this came with a foam kind of mute that you could put in here, but I was looking for a mute that actually would make it sound much more old-timey. So I'd still have the brightness, but I wouldn't have that oh kind of sound. And the old-timey sound also has a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs while you're interspersing your strumming. So you have some individual flat picking. That kind of an idea. Now, on a standard banjo that is open back like this one, which is the claw hammer style, I'm going to turn my camera back the other way. Bluegrass banjos have a resonator on the back, which keeps that loud, plinky sound. It's got a characteristic sound. But open back banjos usually have some kind of a mute. And Marge Diamond made me this mute. What are you doing in there? Somebody's name tag got on your nose. Made me this monkey whose job it is to work in the banjo. Because if I take it out, I do have a lot of volume and I have a change in the tone. And that's not my preferred tone. It is the preferred tone for some people, just not me. So what I was looking for with my Banjammer is to have a tone that was similar to this sound. So that's why I'm using the mute. There was only one time when I took the mute out, and that's when at the Kentucky Music Week, Nancy Barker, the host, had there was an event that happened on one night where we got to ride on a dinner train where they give us dinner and then we ride on a train in central Kentucky. Rainbow Connection, Rocky Top, excellent. Yes. Those are great tunes for this kind of a sound. But she wanted all the instructors to be spread out over the train cars playing music, so it could be like a jam session. But not everybody brought their instruments, so it needed to be a singing jam session. And I remember Robert Force was in my train car, and he was playing, and people. I mean, the windows. It was loud. It was hard to hear. And so I just put this up on the back of two different. The seats were back to back, and I could just set it down on the seat, and we played. And Robert comes over and shouts in my ear, "I bet this is the first and only time people have told you to play that thing louder." And I did take the mute out to play in that situation, but in every other situation, I like having the clarity and the old-timey sound. I like having that kind of a sound that's there. Now, Richard Ashe has made one that he calls, I think, a Dulce Joe, and it looks more like a banjo. It doesn't have the body or even the semblance of a body here. It just has this big long fretboard, but it's got a full size head on it because he wanted it to sound even more like a banjo. Mike said he calls this Tennessee ingenuity. He always wanted to play banjo and couldn't, but he could play dulcimer. So he thought, Tennessee ingenuity. Let's put this together so that you can do both at the same time. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions. And rainbows have nothing to hide. Do, 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 do. I haven't played that on a Banjammer before. I really like that you do that, Jamie. But I love this. I love this for what it does, but I'm not trying to play louder. And I know that some people do that. They also can sometimes get a reputation if you find that people don't want to sit on either side of you because you're too loud, well, you've accomplished your purpose of hearing yourself, but you have disturbed the force by making it difficult for other people to hear themselves. No fair. Well, I bet that you've played it more often, so you're a lot more accurate than I am. I did get to sing that for a wedding once, though, on guitar. But that was one of the things that the bride requested, that they do Rainbow Connection as one of the prelude songs. So I did. There are Stephen Seifert has done a DVD about playing in a kind of a claw hammer style, and Stephen holds his up like this. And in a claw hammer style, your thumb is hitting this popping the top string. I have not perfected his style at all. I know that Brett Ridgway teaches some lessons on this kind of an instrument, and Aaron O'Rourke went and tuned his with Nylagut strings, which give a very different tone, and he's really interested in Celtic style music. And obviously I haven't played that one very much on this instrument, but he particularly likes the style. There is a banjo that is sometimes in the Celtic band that plays in the very not in the strummy style, but a plectrum style. You haven't mastered that either, right? Now there was a time, this was pre-COVID time, but the Clemmers and Aaron O'Rourke and Stephen would do an annual Banjammer gathering in Townsend, Tennessee. That hasn't happened in a while. I don't know if it will again, but there would be people who love to play these kinds of instruments, would bring all their variations of it and work on things together. At this particular time, I don't think we have any lessons on dulcimer crossing for this, but I'm just thinking maybe it's time for some of those lessons. So I wanted to look at these instruments and just say that this is part of the creative process. People have come up with different ways to do things with dulcimer-like instruments and continue to develop the instrument. Now, for comparison, that's right. Does Brett call it paw hammer, or does that what Aaron calls it? Or maybe you're both. Maybe they both do. Yes, you're not supposed to have your hand on the string, and in fact, on claw hammer banjo, I don't know if you can see this. This is one. Deering doesn't make a lot of these, but a lot of the old time ones have a scoop right here. They sacrifice some frets because nobody's playing up there when they're playing claw hammer, so that your hand is actually in front. And on banjo, my forearm is resting on the part of the pot, which is this metal piece that's going around. My forearm's resting there. And you can see that this is where my fingers are touching with all the... Okay, it's Aaron's paw hammer. I knew somebody was talking about that. The idea of claw hammer is that your hand is like a claw, rather than doing Scruggs style or drop thumbing, where you're combining. Stephen Ruth Smith. Steve does a lot of drop thumbing and double thumbing, as well as claw hammer. the Scruggs style stuff is. If you ever get a chance to go to the Earl Scruggs Museum in Shelby, North Carolina, do it. That's where he's from. And in the old county courthouse in the square, they have it's a 3-story building. On the top story, they have a room where you can just play. They got banjos just sitting out there free to play. And the first floor has some videos and stuff so you can see from the inside the different styles that developed into what became known as Scruggs style. Charlie Poole and some other people had done that before, but he's the one that really embraced it, took it, and went with it, and it helped create bluegrass. When he got connected with Lester Flatt, who was playing with the Bluegrass Boys with Bill Monroe, Lester said to Bill, we got to hire this guy. And so he joined their band, and bluegrass was solidified. Now, this style of playing, you can certainly do that kind of style of playing with all your fingers in the Scruggs style kind of way of doing it. Now, if you're doing it in the Aaron O'Rourke kind of style, where you've got it up on an angle like this, it's not going to be on a banjo. The crease on my arm is back here further, and that's going to be way over the fretboard, and that's too far for me. So I end up, it's kind of in the middle is where I'm. So my hand is not resting on the head. It's resting on the rim, which might be why that little piece of wood came off, because that's where my hand rested. Now, I have varying times when I can have fingernails, and when you're playing clawhammer, that first or second nail ends up being pretty important for getting the clarity of sound. Right now, I don't have a strong nail in either place. So what some people do is wear one finger pick and my thumb ends up getting turned completely away, which is not the way you're supposed to do it. So we work on the way other people do it, and then they get corrected, right? So what I wanted to do is compare. You'll notice that Mike's Banjammer version is very much like his Tennessee dulcimer vision, the violin kind of style, using that same cutaway here. Now, Mike typically uses a 5-string. You might notice there's 5 tuners up here. A 5-string configuration. The Banjammer has a 3 or 4-string, but his idea was the same: have a D and a ringing D, and then 2 melody strings for D. And what I did was customize this. I needed to play in a gig, and they needed a 1.5 fret, so I was using spaghetti here. The right size spaghetti gives you a snack, and then you can get a 1.5 fret. But I sent it back to Mike, and I said, "Can you give me a 1.5 and an 8.5? And while you're at it, I'd really like to try this configuration." So this is different than standard dulcimers. I've got my regular bass string that you would expect to hear. This is the D, but that's not the lowest string. There's an A, and then this double melody. So that's the one I'm used to. And then I asked for a doubled bass. This is an octave lower. And it gives me another noodling thing that can happen in this low octave. If I keep that one, these are octaves, but now a tenth. Which is the same interval as going to the melody string, but it's stretched out even further. And what Mike was, he took this idea of the 5 string with 2 melody strings here, letting 1 string ring, and that's what inspired or gave him the idea for doing the Banjammer version. And then there's just lots of ways to play around with this. And yeah, Jamie, you're talking about the fretboard is a little bit wider on the dulcimer, the Banjammer style ones. I'm going to compare this, different builder, obviously, but here's my Spadden, and I think you can see that the capo, or the if I'm going to use a capo in here, the U and capo isn't going to work because this is just wide enough that this doesn't fit. So I need to use I use a Clemmer capo that Mike had somebody make a bunch of capos that fit his dulcimers, and I have a couple other ones that have wide necks, and that capo works on there too. So that is something that does make a difference. Gary Gallier is another person with wide fretboards like that. But what I just love this tone. I love what can happen, but I just want to caution about seeking to get doing this solely for volume purposes, because if you're trying to hear yourself in an ensemble, you might find yourself run out of the ensemble if all you're going for is volume. If you're going for clarity, I highly suggest the use of a mute. And this mute is a t-shirt that I cut up so it would fit in the hole a lot better. And it makes a big difference, doesn't it? That's got a lot of bottom end and resonance, and this takes a lot of that away. It is actually touching the banjo head. One of the things I notice is that when I have no mute, it feels like there's some reverb almost. But there's so much going on that when I'm trying to play, if I have a very intricate kind of thing I'm playing, it's easy for me to lose what it is I'm trying to play. And so when I use the mute, I get the banjo sound, I get the clarity, but it doesn't overpower me, and therefore it doesn't overpower other people as well. So that's our exploring into the world of banjo style dulcimers. And I want to thank you for joining with me today. Thank you for sharing your experiences in the chat. You are welcome to continue your conversation in the chat after this is archived. Like always, this is archived on Facebook. It's archived on the Dulcimer Crossing site and on our Vimeo page as well. The chat part is not archived there. It's only archived on Facebook. When this gets added to the Dulcimer Crossing site, it's under past live events. We just had a great workshop last week with Pam Bowman. We have 2 great ones coming up. And I want to tell you about 2 things I'm very excited to hear that are brand new in the dulcimer world. One is Sarah Kate Morgan from Eastern Kentucky. She's originally from Eastern Tennessee, but now she's living in Eastern Kentucky. And you might have seen her posts after the flooding in eastern Kentucky about the cleanup and the needs that are there. But she just released 2 singles from her forthcoming album. I have been waiting for this album for so long and listening to her voice and her instruments, the instrumentation, the instrumentals and the vocals, the songs. It's just wonderful. Sarah Kate Morgan. She's got 2 singles. They're on Spotify right now. And the other one is a project that I backed on Kickstarter, or Indiegogo. I can't remember which one. One of those crowdfunding sources by Marilyn Michael. She worked with Ken Kolodner, and this is her first recording. She's been playing music for a very long time, but her first dulcimer recording. It's called Out of the Shadows, and it just arrived yesterday. I'm only halfway through, but I am so loving what they've put together in this project, especially when there's 2 dulcimers, 2 hammered dulcimers. So we got Sarah Kate on mountain dulcimer. We've got the 2 hammered dulcimers with Ken Kolodner and Marilyn Michael, Out of the Shadows. I highly recommend those things. There's still a week to register for the Quarantine Festival. Registration closes a week from Friday on the 7th. The North Georgia Foothills Dulcimer Association Festival, registration is open for that. That is in November. And just before that one happens is the Baritone Dulcimer Day. And that one, registration opens up on October 1st. The day for the Baritone Dulcimer Day is the 12th of November. And coming up, we looked at some 4 equidistant strings. We're gonna have a 4 equidistant dulcimer day next March. So that's just a preview. The website hasn't opened up, but it's coming, and we've got a cast of characters that are going to be great for that. So anyway, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your support of making the world dulcified. I have a friend in Colorado who had bumper stickers who gave them all to us when we lived there, called that said Dulcify Colorado. I think dulcify the world, don't you?